What day is it today?
It's
Thursday. Happy Thursday, Chris. It's Monday.
You came on and said Happy Monday. Chris.
It's always Monday at How to Founder.
It's always Monday at How to Founder.
I don't even know what that means.
I don't know. It sounds like a freaking nightmare.
Whoa. We got to hit the explicit tag now on the podcast. Thanks a lot, Chris.
I think I got it only halfway.
Okay.
Anthony, in 1891, a guy named James Naismith couldn't get his rowdy students like you, Anthony, to focus during indoor gym class. Did you like gym or did you hate it, Anthony?
I'm gonna plead the fifth on that.
I bet you were the one that skipped gym class. Rather than following the standard disciplinary approach, he nailed up 2 peach baskets, invented a new game. That game was called soccer. No, I'm just kidding. Basketball. It wasn't an instant hit. His students initially thought it was ridiculous. By letting them help shape the rules, he turned skeptics into evangelists. Within a year, the game spread to YMCAs nationally. Sometimes, Anthony, the path to traction starts embracing the ridiculous and co-creating with your critics. Today on How to Founder, Anthony, we're talking about gaining initial traction. I'm Chris Franks. Today with me is the early bird who always gets the worm, Mr. Anthony Franco. And we have a friend of yours, a friend of ours, Mr. Colin McIntosh, who's somewhat ridiculous himself. He's got ridiculously good facial hair. I'll tell you that much.
He's like a reporter coming live from bed.
It's pretty great.
On location.
Self-proclaimed despotic ruler of the world's shittiest company. That is not explicit, Anthony. It is shittiest. It's a terrific pun. Thank you for letting me do a little pun work this morning. Who turned a belly flop on Good Morning America into a viral sensation. He founded his company in 2017, shipped his first box of sheets in 2018, and by 2022 was ranked 309 on Inc. 5000 fastest growing company list, proving that sometimes the best way to get traction is to make your bed and to jump in it. Colin, the first guest we've ever had. And really, I'm going to say I've maybe taken a few Zoom calls from bed, but you're embracing this. Like, you're living the brand right now in bed.
You guys want to talk about how to get initial traction? Do a podcast interview for free from bed with your sheets and make sure they look really nice and beautiful. And then people will be like, look this up. So it's you gotta stay on brand always. Plus,
you need listeners on the podcast that you're showing up for, though. Like,
that's a good point. Yeah, I'm not sure if I'll get any sales from this one, but no. But I figured. I think I was 27 when I founded Sheets and Giggles, and I just remember thinking, like, I'm gonna embrace this and get everything out of this in case the company doesn't work out. I'm gonna do my podcast interviews from bed. I'm going to sleep in and make it a branded thing. I'm gonna all these different things that I just wanted to do. No meetings at the company before 10 a.m. That's like a company culture rule, and it's you can externalize these things, and people are like, "That's so funny."
I love the fact that you turn inherently your laziness into a brand asset.
Correct. Yes,
phenomenal,
exactly.
Colin.
We're anti-early bird here at Sheets and Giggles. Yes.
Because you guys all, with your incredibly comfortable sheets, you all get incredible night's sleep. Unless you stay up till 3 a.m. working, and Anthony forces you to get up at the crack of dawn to be on this podcast.
I wasn't paid to say this, but the reason why I go to bed so early is to slide into my Sheets and Giggles eucalyptus sheets. So
well played, Anthony.
So good job. I love my sheets.
Can you give me that clip, please? Yeah.
Hey, all right, we're talking about initial traction. You have such a great story, and really, You have such a great company. It's been one that, we followed for a really long time, and you're just an outstanding entrepreneur and founder. So we're happy to have you. But we want to talk today about this idea of that very first early traction. So for you, in your opinion, I love the analogy. Why does gaining that initial traction feel like trying to start fire with damp wood? Why is it so freaking hard to get that early traction, Colin?
It is a great analogy, starting a fire with wet wood. I think that the analogy works really well because you have all the ingredients to a fire, right? You might have fuel, you've got open air, you've got the desire for it, and you're trying to put everything together and get a spark. And even if you have a spark, the fuel doesn't catch, or it's just not the right thing. So I think that, and it can be really incredibly frustrating. I've tried to start a fire with damp wood, living in Colorado.
Yeah, actually, me as well. Yeah, exactly.
It's a nightmare. You're like, it's so frustrating. So I think that being a founder and having an idea or having an initial product is a lot like that, just because you feel like you have all the pieces, but the spark's not catching and it's not spreading, and you keep getting spark after spark after spark after spark, but a lot of people, it never starts to really become that raging flame. And then what you ideally want is that flame to then continue to burn and build upon itself. And so, yeah, I think a lot of people get a couple sparks here and there, but yeah, it is brutal to get that continuous growing flame, for sure.
So according to Anthony, every time that he just touches the fire, it just blazes up. Right,
Yeah,
Anthony? Like, you never struggled with early traction. You're
I'm actually jealous of Colin because he does from afar look like he has the Midas touch when it comes to early traction. He has an amazing, I'm really glad to be talking to you about this, Colin. So I want to learn. So my greedy reason for having you on is so I can understand how you do it, because you're really good at it.
So let's dive in and just talk about this. So you came up with this idea, and really, I think some of the magic of you as a founder is you really are a incredibly gifted and talented marketer and trying to get this message out, etc. But even before you did that, how did you figure out whether or not you could build a product that was good enough? How did you figure out that there was a need, there was a gap in the market? Obviously, sheets is such a big category. How did you even approach solving that problem?
So I'll get super tactical for anyone listening that is a founder or thinking about becoming a founder. But back in 2017, I got laid off from my last job in September 25th, 2017. I remember the day. And then 3 weeks later, on October 19th, I founded Sheets and Giggles. And I had been thinking about this idea for a while, about a funny, punny betting company. It was really like an obsessive idea that I had in my head. But prior to that, the reason it had gotten in my head is I was actually looking for a business of my own to start, that I could take all the lessons of my prior company and pour them into a new consumer brand, that I wouldn't make the, quote unquote, same mistakes as my last company. And so what I did was, and I think it's a great lesson for anyone who's thinking about starting a business, I wrote down my perfect business model on paper. So I wanted a massive market that was highly fragmented, that had no market leader, no brand loyalty, no brand differentiation, that I could kind of zig on the branding where everybody else zagged. And then I really wanted something with a sustainable product, that had really no good legacy, eco-friendly options. And then I wanted something that was traditionally sold at physical retail. So, in 2017, I could bring it online with a direct-to-consumer model. And so I wrote all that down as like my perfect business model. And then I started looking, this is a true story, I started looking at all the domains that I owned. I was really inspired by my friends at alarm.com. I had some mentors over there at that time, and they had built a wonderful business. And partially because when they were going through an incubator, 20 some odd years ago, they owned alarm.com. and they kind of thought like, this is a great name for a home security company. Like, let's start building around this. And so starting with a name can be so powerful for a company. Like, what's in a name is so much. So I had like, sunglasseshalffull.com. That would have been a sunglasses company. I had giraffecarafe.com. Those are carafes in the shape of giraffes. That's
that's a genius company. Why didn't you start that one?
still a work in progress. I'm gonna get a prototype made before long. And so I had all these, names of funny companies that I was thinking of that I thought were really killer names. And I had sheetsgiggles.com, and I was like, this is the one. It's got to be the one. I did my research, $15 billion market for betting in the US, growing, I think it was at the time, growing 10% year over year. Massive fragmentation, no market leader, mostly traditionally physical retail, all polyester and cotton, no sustainable options. And so that's when I decided to incorporate, was when the product fit my business model. And that's a very different founding story than a lot of founders who try to build a product to solve a problem they have and then figure out if it has a market. I made sure it had a market and a business model, and then I started building the product inside of it.
For those of you that are just joining us, we have Colin McIntosh, the founder of giraffecarafe.com. I'm just kidding.
I'm gonna start Giraffe Carafe. Think about it.
Giraffecarafe.com has some legs.
Think about it. They would be colorful, and you'd pour the water out of the neck.
It is truly one of the companies where you can visualize the product from the very first moment.
All the domains I mentioned today on the podcast are for sale to any aspiring entrepreneurs out there. Just so people know.
How many domains do we all like? Between the three of us, we probably have hundreds of domains.
My wife goes, why do we pay like what is it, every like it's like $100 like every
it's only $8 it's only $8 a year. It's cheap, right?
Yeah,
and then you get the bill and
it's only $10. Like do
you want the .org? Sure, what the .org?
Okay,
.orgs.
I'm going to go on a tangent here really quick. What's the dumbest domain that you own? The absolute dumbest domain.
Up there.
It's pretty good. Chris?
I was looking for a company called Boros, and I hit buy, and I actually bought www.boros.com. So I bought www.boros.com.
No.
That's awesome.
That was just a mistake.
This is true. You're not going to think I'm telling you the truth. I own isgullible.com.
Isgullible.com.
I own isgullible.com. I don't know what I'm going to do with it yet. Yeah.
That is between Giraffe Carafe and maybe you guys could bundle. If you're listening today, reach out and make an offer on those two domains.
Sorry to steer the conversation away from
I'll tell you what the best domain I own is I own a lot of pun-based domains, not surprisingly. And I think the best domain I own is probably either workfromrome.com. Why work from home when you can work from Rome, right?
Yeah,
and it's like a travel company that sets you up for remote work in Rome. And then I own bodcasts.com, like not podcast, but bodcasts. So like I thought about starting a company that does where you like listen to workout plans while you're working out instead of watch, because a lot of times it's hard to like be on your phone while you're working out. But if you have like an audio guide for your workout, you can like power through the workout in an hour with like ambient music every set. So yeah,
I don't hate it. It's my mind went to other darker, more nefarious.
Oh no, podcasts. No, like podcasts. Yeah,
no, it makes sense.
But
all right, here's the thing to try to wrangle this group of people back into. The thing that I think is most interesting about your story is that, to put the domain thing aside, because I do think it's funny, but this idea that you started a business the exact opposite way that most people do. You looked at market and ability to disrupt that market first. That's a wildly important but different way. The vast majority of founders do it the other thing. They come up with an idea and they hack on a product. Anthony, if you were to do everything all over again, would you do it Colin's way, or would you still kind of start with a product and a product idea?
So I don't think product ideas are my problem. It's market. And I think it's easy. So the product stuff just comes naturally. What Colin says is really interesting, and that is, so if you have a bunch of product ideas, what you did is you lined all those up into, is this a viable market? So I don't think you can, it doesn't matter which way you start. I think Colin actually said, I mean, he owned the domain, right? So he had already thought about the product. So I think it's fine to start with the product, but don't start until you know that there's a market opportunity. I think
Don't start building. That's what
don't
breaks
start
my
building if
heart
there's a market
is
opportunity. Yeah.
I do startup week sessions and panels and stuff at Longmont Startup League Week in Boulder and Denver, and there's always someone, I've seen this many times throughout the years, there's always someone that's like, hey, I spent $50,000 on a patent for this thing, and then I spent another $100,000 on the initial 10,000 units, and they're sitting in my basement, and my wife really wants to know how I can sell these, and I'm trying to figure out, I'm going to like farmers markets, I'm trying to sell them. How can I get more traction? I'm like, dude, you should have taken that $150,000. You should have never paid a lawyer a penny, and you should have run a crowdfunding campaign for probably earning $1 million if you've got 150 grand to spend on marketing, and gotten your pre-orders, and then you have a massive group of customers to go. So I always tell people to sell before they build. And I think a lot of founders, their instinct is to build before they sell. And I think, frankly, one of the reasons why, and I don't mean to put it in such ungenerous terms, but when people are building, it's all excitement, it's all energy and
It's all
enthusiasm
dopamine.
and
Yeah,
potential.
it's that creative
It's all dopamine.
moment.
It's
Yeah.
all no one can tell you your idea is bad or your product is bad while you're building, and because you haven't put it out to market yet, and no one has said no. And it's terrifying for founders to put it out to market because it means that people can say no. And then it doesn't just potentially bankrupt you or potentially, ruin your dream. It potentially tells you, it rejects you. And I think that's another thing I would tell people is, and this is going to be really ironic, funny advice, wearing a Sheets and Giggles shirt in bed as I do an interview. Don't make your company your entire personality. Again, it's funny advice.
You have not followed that advice.
I'm saying, don't only post about your company on social media. Don't only talk about business with your friends. Don't, only when you talk to your parents or whatever, catch up about how work is or whatever. Have other hobbies besides your company, because how many startups fail out of 100 startups? 99, 95, whatever the number is. And I've seen a lot of people lose their own sense of self-worth and self-esteem when things don't go right. And so that's another way to actually improve your odds of going to market with success, is if you are a little bit removed from your company as your identity. And it's just, this is a thing that you're doing that you love or that you're excited about or that you want to share with the world. And it's less about, this is who I am, putting it out there. Going to market will be a lot less scary because rejection won't be a rejection of yourself or your identity. It's just a rejection of the thing that you're sharing with the world.
This conversation and what you just said is such a critically important message to deliver founders. And I feel like we could riff on this for the entire hour or more, because there is this idea, and I fell into it, Colin. When my first company failed, I was deeply depressed. It hurt so bad because it felt like it was something with me. And the reality, it was a failure for me. The reality is that we did a big exercise with a group of founders about this yesterday, which is, there's all these other parts of your life. There's the relationships, there's your physical health, there is your impact, there is your learning, there's your
community,
play,
your family, your friendships. Yeah.
All of which you have higher agency around than your business. Your business is so tied to market and demands and regulations and the needs and wants and the channels that you're using to market. There's so many variables that exist there, most of which you don't control.
Yep.
Other parts of your life you can control a lot more. You can call your friends and say, let's go grab, a coffee. That's something you can control. Relationships are things that you have way higher agency over. Your business.
Absolutely.
It's a terrific conversation.
You know, I totally agree with you, and it really is. I've thought about this a lot in terms of why don't people ever go to market? I know people that have been working on an idea in the background for like 7 years. You know what I mean?
Ubiquitous, Colin. They've
never launched it. They've never sent an email about it. They've never spent, and I'm like, just see if people will buy it. Now, I mean, there's a difference between a hobby and a business. Maybe some of these things become a hobby over time, but like these are people who fully intend to launch a business at one point. And yeah, I don't know. I think that people are just afraid of rejection. And so my greatest tip or my greatest secret to like getting early traction is, I do crazy, embarrassing things that like, mostly would never be attempted by other people, especially, no offense, especially introverts. Like when I started the company and I did the crowdfunding campaign at Boulder Startup Week, I was running my Indiegogo. I had the laptop open to the Indiegogo page and I was wearing a bathrobe at my booth. And it's really hard to not walk by the guy in the bathrobe and be like, okay, what's going on? What are you doing? Like, what is this? Right. And so,
thank you for asking.
Yeah. And thank you for asking. I'm CEO of Sheets and Giggles. We're running a crowdfunding campaign. We've already raised X $1,000. We'll be delivering in, October. Would you like to order a set? If so, you can get one today with Boulder Startup Week for a $20 off code and only $79. Right. Like in that having that really anyway, there's a bunch of things I could talk about, but
it's a really interesting point because what you're saying, Colin, is that the first barrier that we need to get over as founders in finding early traction.
Shame.
This is a little counterintuitive to even what we thought. But is to start with a concept that somehow remove your ego and your sense of success or failure as a human being from the success or failure of that product, and then get it in the world. Just go do crazy stuff.
Put it out there everywhere. So Reddit has a share your startup thread every month. It might be every quarter now. It used to be every month. So share your startup on the startup subreddit. Ask for advice from people. There's the old adage, if you want advice, ask for money. And if you want money, ask for advice. So ask for advice on your company from everyone from online people, from online communities. But like, let's get a little bit more tactical here. You kind of asked me when I started my company, what did I do to get it off the ground? And there's 3 documents I think every founder needs to do that don't cost any money to make, that is going to help you decide if your business is a viable business model, and it's going to help you when you go forward. The first one that I love to do is actually a brand identity map. So I actually do this before the business plan, which is the second document, and then I do the financial model as the third document. So the brand identity map, I think, is a great thing to do first. And actually, Techstars has a wonderful format for this. If you Google Techstars brand identity map, it's a 1-pager, top down, brand name, positioning statement, taglines, brand archetypes, demographics, value prop number 1, number 2, features number 1, number 2, your limbic hot buttons, your reptilian hot buttons that you're hitting with people when you talk to them. It takes about 4 hours, I think, for co-founders to do together. And it's a really awesome exercise because at the end of this exercise, you will have a beautiful, fully fleshed out picture of how you'll speak to people as the brand, because the brand is like a make-believe mask over yourself, right? It's hopefully all the best parts of you and none of the worst parts. And that's why I like to think about brands as kind of like the best parts of founders. And so a lot of people, they don't do that, or they skip that, and then they're kind of twisting in the wind about like, well, what is my main value prop? What are my main benefits? What are the arguments I'm going to share with people? And this really gets back to the belief that everything is copy. And if you start with a brand identity map, you will have the best copy you can possibly have. And persuasive copy is the number 1 hack that I can tell everybody to get really good at. So
go ahead. I feel like, Anthony, this is actually what you do as part of your process.
Anthony's great at this,
except for limbo and reptiles.
Limbic.
No, it's limbo and reptiles. I think.
I have done the limbo with an alligator, but we'll move on. That's a whole nother podcast.
You carry a reptile under a limbo bar.
So like there's so many examples. So like reptilian hot buttons, like, I'll never tell people that, like, I want them to feel like they're going to age prematurely if they don't buy my sheets, right? But do I want them to maybe have that feeling in the back of their mind? Like, yeah, that's the manipulative part of marketing that honestly is a little gross. But like these are things that like are helpful for you to think about as you are building your brand. So that's number one, is a brand identity map. Number two is a business plan. Do a little 2-pager, go to market strategy, points of differentiation, channel strategy, the competitors, and a timeline. I really think a timeline is important to put on paper of like, January, I'm going to do this. February, I'm going to do this. March, I'm going to do this. And then a financial model, there's a great starter financial model. If you Google Startup Rocket financial model, it's a really, really nice starter model that has, your cost of production, your shipping, if you have a subscription model, your churn rate, all these different things, your fixed costs and overhead. And then you can see, okay, what's my break even? Do I have a reasonably profitable business here? If so, how fast? And then really importantly, how much money do I need to put into marketing in order to, get through this break even profitability phase or a growth inflection point that I'm trying to hit. So, and then, you're off to the races if you understand those numbers, your brand, and your go-to-market strategy. And those are the three things that you need to start.
So just to reset of what the conversation where we've been so far, you started with a market and you started with this concept that this market, big market, needs disruption. And as opposed to starting with a product and a product idea, you really kind of worked your way, what traditionally is backwards, but you started with this market. And then once you got to that place of, I think this is right, again, this is a little counterintuitive and it's a little bit, like I said, what you do, Anthony, it's not what I recommend, which is you then start with brand and work down from brand versus starting from product or product market fit or anything like that.
I think brand is everything. I think brand is product market fit. I think brand is what you're selling. I think, you get the first sale with great marketing. Now you get the second and third sale with great product and great customer service. Absolutely. But you cannot get that first sale without great marketing. It's sort of a blocker. And so I really think that having your brand dialed in is the most important thing to get started. But it's not just an important thing to get started from a marketing perspective. It's for your own understanding of what you're selling. Like, that's the thing, is I think a lot of people, they're like, oh, I have this great product and it does all these awesome things, but no one's buying it. And I don't know why. And it's like, well, you haven't thought about how you're communicating this information to people. And I think that a lot of people, especially product people, I'm not trying to put anybody down. This is why teams work so well together, of like sales guys and product guys and marketing guys and product guys, is I think a lot of people kind of like maybe who build products are less interested in the marketing piece or think it's less important. But I think every part of a company is crucial. And so that's the thing that I think is going to get you the first sale, is your marketing and
Anthony, just make a note that we need to get a product guy and a marketing guy.
Yeah.
Because,
need both.
Like we're neither. So,
how are you going to get someone to stop scrolling if you're not, being interesting? And how are you going to be interesting if you don't understand what you're selling? And if you're not speaking to it well? So, and then I can get really tactical if you want on like,
please,
how I did the crowdfunding campaign.
I want to get to that next. I just want to touch on one other thing, because we've been talking about two things in parallel. And the first one is tactically how you went through this. And secondarily is about how you as a founder sort of was able to separate your ego from success or failure. The piece that is a little bit, I just want you to touch on, is you then went out and wore a bathrobe and you did silly stuff and you put yourself out there in this world where I think a lot of people might say to themselves, well, if this thing might fail, why am I going to go and make a kind of do embarrassing things? I just think it's one of those deals where probably people aren't going to remember, but how did you sort of mentally approach that?
It's fun. I told my it's fun. Like like life is fun. There's no rules. Like you can show up wearing a bathrobe to a pitch competition or a TV interview. Like I did everything I could in the beginning, and I think that's the other thing is like you really do have to have a maniacal, nonstop, almost obsessive type of energy about your company in the beginning, and you have to say yes to everything. Like one time I got offered a television interview on an NBC affiliate in Palm Desert, California, and I was like, okay, how do I, as like before the crowd, like literally like I think right before the crowdfunding or right after the crowdfunding, I can't remember. And so I packed my bathrobe. I flew to, I think, either LA or San Diego, whichever one's closer. And then I got a rental car and I drove to Palm Springs, which is a ridiculous drive, by the way. And
That's like 4.5 hours. And you go
like 4.5 hours through the desert, winding roads. Like I got lost at one point with no signal. And like literally just like what I had like a bottle of water in the car and I'm in the middle of the desert. I'm like, what? Like, I'm like, this is
man
bad.
Found dead in bathrobe and car.
Yeah. And so then, I show up to the studio. They're like, hey, are you calling? I'm like, yeah, I'm calling here for the interview. Like, great. They put makeup on me. They get me on set. They do a little interview, 5 minutes. They go, hey, great. Thanks for coming. I go, great. But I walk back out. I got my car and I drove 4.5 hours back. And like in that type of insanity is what then gets me the ability to say featured on NBC on my website, right? With an image of me in a bathrobe speaking to an anchor on set. And it cost me a few $100s to fly out there, rent a car and do the thing, but it's way cheaper than people are thinking to do these. It takes time, energy, and a really, I think, unhealthy obsession with your company early on. The first couple years, you should be gaining weight. You should be waking up at 7 a.m. You should be going to sleep at 3 or 4 a.m. with your laptop on your stomach. Like, you should be taking pre-workout in the morning instead of coffee to get your energy. Like, these are terrible, unhealthy habits, but like, you really, to get something off the ground, and I'm talking about early founders with nothing, because the question about traction, right, about going from 0 to 1, if you're someone with wealth who's done a business before, who has a reputation online, who's built a following, you can get traction by creating content and spending money. And it's not a rocket science formula, right? Go spend your money and go get traction. I'm assuming this question that we're talking about here today is for people that don't have money, don't have a reputation, don't have anything to get going, and are like, how in the world do I get the word out about my product? And so that's one tip, is do everything, say yes to everything, figure out how to get on that plane or how to get to Palm Desert, and, get yourself a branded shirt or something that looks awesome. That's a signature thing. On my bathrobe, I get the monogrammed S&G and, but yeah, I'm happy to get tactical about like how we launched properly and got our first, couple thousand customers.
I definitely want to get to that, but there is this point that you touched, and I just want to highlight it, which is you went through a series of steps for yourself, cognitive steps. Is this the right market? Is this the right fit? I built the brand. I built all these. I built a financial plan. I've decided that this is the thing. Knowing the fact that it's not right, you're going to have to change. You're going to have to pivot. But you got to a place within your business where you made a decision. And at that decision point, you went all in. Is that fair to say?
That is fair to say. And in fact, I know exactly the type of decision point and inflection point that you're talking about. It was January 2nd, 2018. I had incorporated the company almost 3 months prior. I had, I'd gotten a logo from a calligrapher, right? I had gotten a couple landing pages set up on a Shopify store. I had done some interviews with manufacturing partners and brokers and people that, could help me get the product off the ground. I had spoken with some people in the fabric space who do, shirts and pants and that sort of thing, who could, mentor me on how to cut and sew. And I had sort of done all this legwork. I had, the brand identity map and, I had, invested my life savings into the company bank account. And so then I was kind of like New Year's party, I was like, this is it. Like tomorrow I'm going to launch the company and I'm going to post about it on my personal Facebook and LinkedIn, and I'm going to announce it. And then there's no going back. And that is like a really scary, super scary thing, because it makes it very real, and it puts yourself out there to your communities, and you don't know if people are going to support you or not, or even should they, right? Like they don't know anything about your company and what you're doing, and they have their own very busy lives to worry about. And so I wrote a blog post called Rise and Shine, and I put it out there on sheetsgiggles.com as the very first blog post, and I shared it on my networks. And I got a lot of great, hey, congratulations, this is exciting, can't wait to see what happens, this is a great name, like what an awesome idea. And that was really nice. I mean, like to have that kind of like, not validation because no one's bought anything, but at least support. And so having a support network and having people who love you and who give a shit about you is, I think, also crucially equally important to being comfortable enough to launch something, because it feels less scary now. Now I've seen all the problems, how the sausage is made. I'm a grizzled veteran at this point. I'll launch something tomorrow. If I think it's a good idea, I'll just put it out. You know what I mean? Now it's like there's no ceremony about it. Just like get it out the door and ship it. But like,
I remember when I used to care about my product.
Yeah, it's like God. I remember when I didn't have to worry about financing X 100,000 units, and I could just yeah, whatever. But no, you do have to be extremely obsessive about that first product. I remember my first box got to my front door. My first sample box was a white box. Terrible idea, by the way. Never do white packaging. UPS and FedEx have no regard for how beautiful your packaging is. And I was so excited, and I took a picture of the first box and I put it on my Instagram and stuff like that. And I still have that box. 7 years later, I still I'm moving cross country right now, and I literally made sure that we were not throwing away that one box. That's my very special memento. So
I like it. So Anthony, I just want to get a quick reaction. I'm thinking maybe one of your projects.
How's this
when
one?
do you decide to go all in?
Sorry.
So because part of
Colin said do embarrassing things. Yeah,
that was good.
Part of the things that we've done is you take incremental steps, and you're working on 3 or 4 projects at the same time, and maybe one of them starts to get a little bit more traction. You decide to go all in on this thing. When you started MC Squares, I mean, you obviously invested a bunch in a 3D printer, but when did you decide to go all in on that versus any of the other ideas that you had?
I'm still trying to make that decision. No, it's a great question. How do you decide this? And I don't think there's good one size fits all advice here. So I tend to be more like Colin, where I make a decision and I run hard at it. Like it's like I get tunnel vision. That can work. It can also be incredibly destructive. I know other founders that have been very successful, having, spinning multiple plates at the same time, doing multiple projects or multiple startups and testing the market. In reality, what I think a hybrid approach is correct. In that, so I went all in. I'm struggling with this. Let me kind of give you what my hypothesis was. So with MC Squares, I built an entire factory so that I could produce a brand new product every 2 weeks, like launch a brand new product every 2 weeks. And the reason is that 70% of consumer products totally fail. So you can either over plan and really try and make that percentage, you have a 50-50 shot at launching, or you launch 10 products to everybody's one and have a better likelihood of success. You're gonna have 7 that fail and 3 that win. And so it's more times at bat. And so I think that I like that mentality of having a lot of times at bat, especially if you're building a product. Building a product company of any size, optionality is critical. But optionality and all in don't necessarily, like, they can be oil and water. So I'm rambling here because I don't have a good answer. It's a personal decision and what you think you're good at and what you're willing to do. I do know that if you don't give your company a good enough shot, you don't really know if it's going to be succcessful or not. You have to kind of go all in.
I think you have to go all in. I think that you like Anthony just said, if you don't give it a good enough shot, you'll always be left wondering. And it's better to live your life not wondering than it is to, always wonder what could have been. And that's another thing is my best advice. People always ask what's your best advice for founders, entrepreneurs, or that sort of thing. I'm sure you guys have some good nuggets too.
Actually, no. That's why we started this. We have nothing. It's
my best advice is always that the risk reward is so in favor of reward that it's not even funny. Like a lot of us are very lucky in the sense of like, my worst case scenario is probably going to, be a higher up sales guy or, a marketing leader somewhere at a larger company. And, if that's your worst case scenario, to have like a solid job that has a great salary and good benefits and, is enjoyable to do, then start a business. Because like what is like, if your worst case scenario is that positive, then like it's a very privileged position. I'm not as privileged as some in the sense of like, I didn't have a ton of money to start my business. I didn't have, an inheritance or a small loan of $1 million from my father or something like that. But I did, I went all in and I think that's it's important to, pick your battles, but when you pick them, just go for it.
Colin, with respect, you're wrong. The worst case scenarios, you end up like Anthony and I.
No.
I'm happy. I like where I'm at. Just leave me out of that. I like where I'm at.
No, it's fine. I once worked for a guy. So a very impactful moment in my career. I was 23. I had just been fired from my first job at the world's largest hedge fund, and I got offered a job as a recruiter at the company that hired me at that hedge fund. And I maybe a month into my job, I was getting the lay of the land, learning how to be a recruiter. And, I was thinking I was making like 40 grand a year, 36 grand a year, something like that. And with no bonuses, which was crazy for a recruiter. And I remember I asked the guy who was the founder of the company, and we were in this like exposed brick, like New Haven building with like leaky pipes and like cardboard desks, like very boutique recruiting firm. You know what I mean? And I asked the guy, I was like, and he's become a good friend of mine over the years, but I never forget this conversation. I was like, why did you start a recruiting company? Like, how do you get into that? And he looks me right in the eye. He's like, Colin, I would start a paperclip company if I could be my own boss. And that was like his like guiding North Star light of like, it does not matter what I do or what I make. I am in this to be my own boss, period, end of story, work for myself. And I think that really kind of translated over to my own, kind of thought in life is like, yeah, I'll sell bed sheets for a living. That's okay. Like I love making my own decisions and being my own boss and having the creativity and the agency to do what I think is best for, for my company. And it's not necessarily about never wanting to work for other people, because like I've worked for bosses who I love. I have incredible mentors and people that I've worked with in my early career that taught me so much. And I love working with talented people. But I think it is about agency. And I think that entrepreneurs are people that have to have their own agency. And so if you're listening to this and you're like, damn, I'm tired of, not making my own decisions, like you probably got to start your own company.
I think that's what I was joking about. You end up like Anthony and I, but the reality is that there are people that are wired that way, like us, which is once you start that and you realize that you do have an opportunity in life to go out and make your own way in the world,
your own path.
It really becomes that thing. But again, there is a there's always the opportunity to go back and get a job and figure out what's next. And
it's
you know,
not terrible.
you-
It's not. This is life. You know what I mean? Like, and people have this incredibly scary concept of starting a business. And like, yeah, I mean, there's plenty of days with headaches and anxiety and all these different things. But the beautiful part about entrepreneurship stress is that the only stress is your stress. You're not absorbing other people's, like it doesn't come from above you. It's just like, yeah, now you do have to absorb the stress of, your team, but like, yeah, your only stress is your stress. I think that's a wonderful gift to give to yourself.
So we've spent a ton of time talking about this stuff, but I do want to get to the tactics. And so as briefly as possible, just talk me through the steps that you took to launch the company. And, Anthony, I think he piped in. Do you want to follow on to that question, Anthony, with yours, which is about
so I would love, like, for our audience, just give me I would love to hear your story, but also like give us 3 tactics that help you get from 0 to 1. Like, just be really practical or tactical. If you have like, do this, this, and this, and you're off to a decent start.
So I'm biased because my start was with crowdfunding. So I can give you a step-by-step guide on how to be successful at crowdfunding, which I think a lot of consumer product, right. So I think a lot of consumer products will fall into this category. So if you have a consumer product idea, you don't have any funding, you don't have any money, maybe you've got $5,000 or $10,000, right, that you can cobble together, you can do a successful crowdfunding campaign. And what you have to do is have blinders on to one goal, and that is to build an email list. And I'll tell you why. So basically, let's start with the goal of the crowdfunding campaign. I want to raise $100,000 goal level, right? Well, to do $100,000, you generally have to do about 30% or $30,000 on day one. Nowadays, it's actually a little bit more. It's potentially more like 50%. But let's say back then, 30%, I needed to do $30,000 on day one. Well, for then you have to understand what your average order value is, what your pricing is, what are you selling, what you're offering. I knew my average order value was going to be about $100. To do $30,000 on day one at $100, I need 300 customers on day one. Okay, great. I'm working backwards here. Now to get my 300 customers on day one, I need an email list. How big of an email list do I need? Well, email lists reasonably convert at about 3%. 1% if you're doing something really bad, 5% if you're doing something really good, but it's probably around 3%, maybe 2 or 4. So if I need 300 customers on day one and an email list converts at 3%, I need 10,000 emails in order to guarantee myself, yada, 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 $100,000 crowdfunding campaign. So once you have that understanding, you write on the big whiteboard 10,000 emails and you circle it. And then that becomes your only goal before your day of launch. And the way that you get 10,000 emails or any number of emails, there's the easy way and then there's the hard way. The hard way is, and I think that this is really admirable when people do this with no budget, go on Facebook groups, go on subreddits, go talk to people who are interested in your thing where they already are. Go to these online groups, go to meetups, go collect emails from your target audience in a very manual way. And the best way to do this, by the way, is to do a survey. Post and say, hey, I'm doing a survey as I'm building a product, and I would love people in this community's opinions on what I should build because I really value your passion and your energy around this subject. And people love taking a survey about how to build a product because they want to give you everything, an idea they've ever had about this particular industry, especially if they're passionate about it. So surveys are a great way to collect emails in like sort of like a jerry-rigged way where you're going around to these interest groups. Now, if you have a little bit of money, say, maybe $10,000, $20,000 to put behind marketing, this is actually when it gets really easy. Do a photo shoot, hopefully with a friend who will charge you a sweetheart deal on a day of photography. Do a video, hopefully for a low price. You can do a professional video, which I'd recommend for a few $1,000s if you know someone, or you can do a non-professional video nowadays with equipment pretty damn good that you can do for free. And then you want to build a landing page. You can use, in my opinion, Kickoff Labs is the best landing page generator. It also hooks into a really nice crowdfunding referral program that I can't remember what it was called, but it's a great crowdfunding referral program that gets your audience to be referral customers. So you build a landing page, you have your photo shoot, your video shoot, you hook it into your Shopify, you hook it into your Facebook, you start running Facebook ads or Instagram ads or TikTok ads, and you have a landing page, very simple, 6 images, maybe a video, some copy, your value propositions. You need 3 points of differentiation in order to go to market in a category with a new product. And then you tell people, if you sign up today and give us your email, you're locking into the best price you'll ever get on this amazing product that does these 3 things differently. And that's how you collect emails. And we did that. And on day 1, we collected 38% of the emails from the traffic that we sent to that page. Over the course of 2 months, we ended up gathering 46% of all emails. And, we tweaked where we put the email collection button, where we put the headers and the images and which images we used. And we really dialed it in. But you can spend your first $500 on Facebook and Instagram ads and target people that are interested in new products, crowdfunding, that sort of thing. And you will be shocked at the amount of people that are excited to give you their email to be notified of when you launch. And then once you get your number of emails that you're going for, sure enough, we got 10,000, 11,000 emails. I shut the hose off. Cost me about $9,000 to do that. I think I spent 89 cents per lead. And then we converted those emails on day 1 of our crowdfunding campaign at 4.5%. So we had 450 customers. Wow. And we made $45,000 at $100 AOV, just like I predicted. And we were off to the races and did $284,000 in crowdfunding pre-orders. And that's how I got my money to start the company.
I mean, it's an amazing story. And I think that what you just outlined, even though you said that, no, it's all right. What you just outlined is true in SaaS companies as well. You can do similar things, maybe not that exact same model, but you can create that same concept of creating email lists, trying to drive interest, etc.
I always thought SaaS go-to-market would be so easy. You just email a bunch of people bad copy, and apparently you can grow a company.
I mean, why are you looking at me when you said bad copy, Colin? Jesus. Just that one misspelling in an email I sent you.
The emails that I get, because I have CEO in my LinkedIn, the emails I get every day, I get like probably 200 sales emails every day, right? And these people, I'm like, who is looking at this email and being like, yep, ship it.
Right.
Beautiful.
Exactly.
Incredible. I'm like, I email them back sometimes and I'm like, let me help you. Like, I'm like, and I do
the same thing.
Like, email for them.
or I'll respond to somebody that's particularly clever and good and be like, look, I have no interest in your product, but I really just want to say, well done on your copy.
I do that all the time too. Sometimes people are like, send me great copy. And I'm like, dude, I just want to let you know, this is amazing. This is definitely going to work. Keep sending this out. It's not for me, but yeah. And then a couple years ago, they stopped doing this, thank God. But a couple years ago, software companies, there must have been one viral video or LinkedIn post or seminar or something where someone was like, you want any reaction from someone, any reaction, even if it's a bad reaction. So your 4th email should just insult them.
Yeah, just
and there was this huge trend where on like the 3rd or 4th email from someone, they just be like, oh, I guess you don't give a fuck about your business. Like, I get, and I guess that you really don't care about your team and that you just don't care at all about, and I'm like, fuck you. Like, I'd email them back like all caps, like, fuck you. And
they got you.
And then they'd be like, well, should we set up a call? Like, I'm like, no, like, this does not work and will never work. Like, no, like, and like, mark them as spam also, but they stopped doing that. Thank God. Like, somebody finally got it through their heads that was a terrible. Yeah,
it turns out when your domain gets blacklisted because you get marked for spam.
I don't get why it's so hard for people to understand persuasive copy.
I feel like we could probably do a solid 3 hours here and never cover the same ground twice. But we're going to go into the speed round. So speed round, just ask you a quick question. Let me know your reaction. Speed round question number 1. Better to launch quickly with flaws or perfect it before you launch?
Initially, I can't answer this quickly. You want to be hyper obsessive about the quality of your product. The first impression matters so much. So be obsessive about as much as you can. Do not let it stop you from shipping a product. So it's a little bit of both of like, at some point it's good enough and you need to know it's good enough and you need to be, but don't ship it with a typo. Don't ship it with the wrong color scheme, or don't ship it with, a word orphan. I get obsessed about this, like a word orphan where you have like one word on one line. It just looks kind of sloppy. Like, don't, like there's a bunch of like small things that do matter to first impressions, but at the same time, you must ship fast, and flaws are okay. And you can always fix flaws in the future. But I think when we shipped, we had like I can't even remember, like a 6 or 10% defect rate in our initial product run, which was terrible. And that was a mess and a nightmare. But we shipped our first few thousand units and most of them were great. And we got a lot of great reviews. And then we just replaced the ones that were flawed. So, yeah, I mean,
Reid Hoffman famously says, if you're not a little bit embarrassed by the product when you launch, you've launched too late. Okay,
you'll never launch anything. Yeah.
Cold outreach or warm introductions? What's the best way to get that early traction?
Oh man, I think warm intros for things that you need, cold outreach for customers, because honestly, I think a lot of people, when they do like a crowdfunding or a launch, they think that their friends and family and their business networks are going to support them, and that's just not true. Like, people really couldn't care about what you're building or what you're launching. Like, they have their own problems and their own shit going on. So for me, warm intros are awesome for like mentorship, conversations, advice, investing, partnerships, like agencies you should work with. But then cold is what you have to do for customers. Like, otherwise you won't reach enough people to convert. So you're going to have a low conversion rate in the beginning. You will. And so you have to reach a lot of people.
Focus on features or that customer experience?
Customer experience and benefits. I think features are great, but what does it do for them? That's what it's all about. So, like, no one really cares that my sheets have a perfectly cylindrical filament, but they do care that if you sweat, it'll wick away the sweat, spread it across the fabric evenly, evaporate it into a wonderful cooling effect, and moisture won't stay in the fabric, so you'll never wake up in a pool of sweat. That's what people want to know. So yeah, customer experience over features for sure.
Build community first or product first?
Oh, community. I think community begets you your first sales, and community can mean a bunch of different things. For me, it meant 10,000 of my closest friends that I was emailing every week with a bunch of jokes and surveys and bits and free pizza. I would post on Friday to our Instagram, and I'd say free pizza Friday, tag a friend in the comments, and we're going to pick somebody to send 2 pizzas to tonight. And, I would personally call the Domino's closest to them and like order them their 2 pizzas, and, like stuff like that doesn't scale, where I kept my phone by my bedside. I put my cell phone on the website. I wake up at 3 a.m. to pick up the phone. I figured if somebody was calling a betting company at 3 a.m., it was a fucking emergency. Or they were Hawaiian, like one or the other. So either way, I want to pick up that phone call. So yeah, do build that community and have that one-to-one relationship with people, and it will serve you so well. And be like really genuine and authentic with people. Don't always try to sell them on shit. And that's one of my pet peeves, is when I go to a business meetup, or like maybe it's my own fault for going to these meetups and expecting people to act differently, but like, I can't stand it when somebody's only talking to you about business or your company or their company or what they're working on. It's like, we could talk about anything else, man. Like, we got our whole lives to talk about. Like we're having a beer. Like, let's talk. So like, build that community and friendships, and it'll serve you really, really well.
Paid acquisition or organic acquisition, organic growth for initial traction?
Again, there's 2 ways to do it. If you have no choice, then organic. But if you can pay for traffic and acquisition, it is absolutely an easy button to get going.
It just goes faster.
Yeah, but build around organic for the long term and really set yourself up nicely for SEO in your category and for common search strings. And so think about SEO early and often from a technical and content perspective.
Yeah, and even though it's not going to pay off initially. So
And now AI optimization as well. That's a whole new.
That's a whole other thing. We've decided it's our next company. Anthony, unbelievable conversation, Colin. We covered a ton of ground. What did you learn? I imagine it's kind of a broad set of lessons to take away.
I've got a huge list here, and it barely covers half of it or a quarter of it. But I'm going to race through it really quick. I like what Colin said. Don't start until you know there's a market opportunity. I really like that framing. Sell before you build. So decide there's a market and prove there's a market by selling before you actually build anything. I like that we talked about removing your company from your own personal identity. Therefore, it allows you to do crazy and embarrassing things and be remarkable. There's literally no rules when you're just starting out. You don't have a brand to protect yet, right? So it doesn't matter. He talked about building a brand identity map, and I totally agree with him that writing persuasive copy. I would say that's one of Colin's superpowers. I'm not bad at it, but he's really strong at it. There's nothing like good copy for ads. That it's a lifelong craft for anybody that's doing marketing, is continuing to be better at writing persuasive copy. And what worked last year probably is not going to work this year, because everybody's taking those tricks and tips that you did and applying them. And then
in a world of AI copy, really good human written copy is going to become even more clear and more differentiated, in my opinion. Now, I think the bar has been raised. The floor has now been raised, because every bad copywriter now at least can be a mediocre one with AI.
Why are you looking at me again, Colin? Jesus, that one typo.
Two more things. Initial social proof is gold. Initial traction is to build, have a goal to build a good email list by mapping back what you need. Yeah. It's hyper-focused, tunnel vision on building an email list. That's what I got, Chris.
That is amazing. Deep dive recommendations. There's some good ones. The Cold Start Problem by Andrew Chen. There's a good article called The Counterintuitive Way to Find Your First Customers by the First Round Review, and a podcast from 0 to 100,000 users by the Indie Hackers with Portland Allen. What other recommendations, Colin? And how can we find you? Have you written a bunch of great blog posts on this stuff? If not, please do. Where can we follow you? Where can we connect?
So I don't know if I clued in on this early or recently, but I've really begun to articulate my feelings on this more recently. I do not create a lot of content personally about business, and I do not put myself out there on social a lot anymore, because it is really bad for your mental health to be exposed to the idiocy and inanity of the internet. Or
just Anthony's posts in general.
You know what I mean? I'm talking about Anthony Franco right now. I've had enough of this guy. But no, I actually, where they can follow me, I do have a Twitter, I do have a Threads, I've got, my LinkedIn, obviously, Colin McIntosh, Sheets and Giggles, I'm very easy to find. But you won't catch me posting very much, because I'm trying to spend my life off of offline. You get one life.
That's counterintuitive right there.
It is, but it makes me better when I can think, and I can take a long shower, go for a walk, or do a meditation, or be with my wife and just relax. If I can think more, what is your core competency as an entrepreneur and as a founder? It's your ideas and your brain and your creativity. And if you're constantly creating or consuming for other people, you don't have room in your own head for your own thoughts that you need in order to. So I really have gotten more protective of my own time and my own thoughts. And so that's another thing that I'll say is like, if you're constantly consuming, you can't be creating. And I don't think that the creating that I love the most is that kind of like business content. So with apologies to folks, I don't have a ton of places to follow me for my innermost business thoughts, but
but I think we can all agree just to not follow Anthony. That's really what it's
that's really what you have to do, is just
really,
Anthony's a great follow. He's got a lot of good business advice, and he's guys been on Shark Tank and made some serious deals.
He's done some things,
Yeah, some things, yeah. But
it makes it more awkward when you try to compliment me after insulting me. So let's just skip that.
But I'm easy to find. Just search for Colin Sheets and Giggles, and you'll find me. And I'm out there.
Colin, congratulations! Sheets and Giggles is a terrific company. And
it's a great company.
Just in a great company, and it's inspiring. It's inspiring to hear your story. Thank you again so much for joining us today, Anthony. What do we have coming up?
Next episode, we're going to be talking about understanding design and creative with Emily Schneider. Looking forward to that. And for everybody listening, thank you for listening. Make sure to visit us at howtofounder.com to follow us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all of them. Please help us out. Like our podcast, rate us on Apple Podcasts. That would be great. And until next time, make your venture grow faster than Chris's hair. I almost forgot. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.